Hello and welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. I'm Tim Hayes. I'm your host for the first hour, and today is Friday, February 21st, 2025. As always, we're grateful to everyone who's joining us here today, whether you're listening live or through the archives, as we spend another couple of hours teaching and supporting people in using some of the most powerful, effective, efficient, and accessible tools I've ever encountered. These tools are available absolutely free through the tireless efforts of Dr. Michael and Jeannie Ryce on the website at whyagain.org. If you go to that website and click on the two words that say Start Here in the upper left-hand corner, it will take you to a page where you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Michael Ryce's book. His book is titled, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And that chapter of the book contains a narrative description and explanation of the primary tool in this work. That tool is called the Reality Management Worksheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Wake-Up Sheet, and it's a tool I've been using to great effect for over 20 years now to improve the quality of my life and most of my relationships, and to turn any negative emotional experience I have into part of the infallible guidance system that each and every one of us has been given. You can also download the actual worksheet process itself. It's a simple PDF file. Click the link, download it, print it off, copy it as often as you'd like, and use it over and over again, absolutely free. You can also download a whole host of audio files of shows just like this one, that if you choose to listen to them even repeatedly, they can serve as a powerful tutorial for you to help you get maximum benefit from these tools in the shortest amount of time possible. We hope people do all of that soon and often, including you can go to your app store and type in the three words Heartland Aramaic Forgiveness. And if you choose to do that, before you're done typing the word forgiveness, you'll see the glowing heart icon. If you choose to tap on it, it will let you download a completely free and private app that contains the Reality Management Worksheet. It contains an abbreviated version of that worksheet process, and it contains a copy of the Dragon Klingon game, which is a wonderful way to introduce these tools to even younger audiences. We hope people do all of that soon and often, primarily because it tends to improve the quality of people's lives the more they actively apply these tools in their lives. And secondarily, because it tends to prompt comments, questions, answers, and testimonials. If you have any of those to share with us, we'd appreciate you doing so. You can email me at tjh@mindshifters-academy.org, and or you can email Jeannie at jeanie@whyagain.org. Again, that's whyagain.org. And if we get a comment or a question from you, we'll address it on the internet show. And then, as time allows, send you a notification about what day and time that occurred so you can listen back to the archive for your feedback or input. If you're listening to us on the internet at live.needle.com/mindshiftersradio, we're glad you're here. We're glad we can share this space with you. And you do not have the option through that internet connection to send us a comment or to call directly. So you would need to go to your app store and type in the search for the NEDL app, NEDL, NEDL AI for Live Radio Tuner. Once you download that app, sign in, answer a question or two, then you would have the option to either type in a comment or raise a hand to be talking to us directly. And we would appreciate that. We appreciate it. It makes it so much easier for us to live into our intention when people let us know how these things are landing for them. And our experience has been that most of the shows that are really good and people say, wow, that should be a best of, or I want to listen to that again, most of them are a direct result of people just like you calling and raising a hand. So we would appreciate it if you're willing to do that. Let us know how we can support you. Let us know how these sessions are landing for you, whether you prefer that we do worksheets or that you're benefiting from us reading the books we're reading with commentary, and or if there's any particular question you might have that we could help you with about understanding this material better. We'd be happy to do that. Last night was our support group. We have a support group on Tuesday and Thursday night, and we had one last night, and no exception. And it, no two groups are the same. It's always a powerful experience, whether there are two people in the group or five or six. And we never know how any of these things are going to truly land for people when they join us. And last night we had a request to listen to something with a little bit more feminine energy, so we listened to a few chapters of the book "Start Where You Are" by Pema Chödrön, and it resonated nicely for some people and awkwardly for others. And even that is of high benefit because, as we know in this work, if I start to experience an unpleasant response to something, that's just an opportunity for me to dismantle something that's unpleasant within me. And we were given that opportunity last night to discuss, okay, so what's going on? What is the energy that I have in me that I carried into this situation, which is getting resonated by how I'm choosing to interpret and respond to what's going on. And if I don't like that sensation, that emotional state, that set of conclusions, that belief system that's gotten generated, then I have the tools in this work and in other types of work to dismantle what it is that I'm carrying in me that's less than loving, that's less than favorable in my experience. So we did that, and last night it didn't directly result in a worksheet, but I'm sure there were several worksheets that people were able to identify that would be of benefit for them to do going forward. And it's it, it put me in mind of how I had, when I was in college, a number of people were reading the book Autobiography of a Yogi and loving it. But I was in a Catholic college and I've been raised Catholic, and to me that seemed like heresy and worthless, maybe even hurtful. So I avoided the book at all costs. And I don't know how many years ago, maybe only 4 or 5 years ago, maybe more, I started listening to Michael Singer after I had read two of his books. Um, the first one that I read was titled The Untethered Soul, and the second one I read was The Surrender Experiment. And in both of those books, Michael Singer, who thoroughly I had thoroughly enjoyed the books, and I had a very good sense that he had his head on straight, as my dad would say. Michael Singer, talked about how one of his most powerful teachers was Paramahansa Yogananda, who had written the book um, Autobiography of a Yogi. And when I heard that after having read these two books by Michael Singer, I thought, well, maybe I should look at this book again. And I picked up the book and started reading it and loved it until about two-thirds of the way through. And then something that I was reading left this energy resonating in me of I'm feeling sick to my stomach. I had to put the book down. I wanted to run away. But because I'd been, using the kind of tools that Dr. Michael Ryce offers and other tools for years before that and doing my own work, I realized I was the one creating this kind of almost a sense of nausea in me. And it was, if I'm creating it, then it's accessible for me to dismantle it. So I put the book down and did some EFT tapping and I did some Michael Rice worksheets and then a day or two later I went back to the book and I just read right through it with no issue whatsoever. And that's the kind of thing that I thought about when one of our group members last night was experiencing such discomfort that the person in the group just wanted to shut it off, turn away, didn't want to hear it anymore. And we all have the capacity, once we learn tools like this, once we have stepped into the willingness to observe how we are creating our own emotions, we all have the capacity to move through those kinds of situations in the future more gracefully and open ourselves to discovering what is it that we carried with us into that situation that is producing the discomfort that we're experiencing. And then, of course, if I'm willing to apply the tools, I can dismantle it. And that's the core of this work, that we're continually moving ourselves closer and closer to 100% responsibility for everything we experience, including our emotions. So let us know how this is landing for you. Someone asked in the comments in the app. The app is apparently working for me today, and Cammie's asking, how do we join the group? I tried to type in the website where it's easiest for me to direct people to the mindshiftersacademy.org website. And on that website, we have two different info pages, one for Thursday night's group and one for Tuesday night's group. There's a different Zoom login, uh, code for each day. And if you go there, it's absolutely free to join us. We're on in those groups from 6:30 to 9 p.m. on Central Time on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And the more the merrier. So we'd be happy to have you join us. I suppose I should share the news that I was able to connect with Christian Sundberg yesterday in a Zoom call, and we scheduled something for the 1st of August to do an interview. Christian is wisely limiting his um, appearance on these different podcasts and interviews to one per week. And August 1st is the first time that he doesn't have another interview scheduled. So what I told him in the call last night was, we've had a few glitches, but we will get them ironed out one way or another. And I will have him in this time slot. He agreed to meet us at 11 o'clock on a Friday. Uh, I think it's a Friday. And we'll talk more about that as we get closer to that. And if there are any glitches in the system or difficulties with recording, we'll just do it in a different format so we make sure we have good connections and a good recording. And so if you're interested in that, if you enjoyed our book reading of Christian Sundberg's book, A Walk in the Physical, um, You might want to prepare some questions for us. You might want to, make sure that you stay connected so you find out when that's actually happening. Um, if it pans out that we're able to do it as scheduled. um, I'm flipping through my calendar here to get to what I had outlined. Is I believe it turns out to, yeah, it's a Friday, August 1st. And that might get an adjustment because it's way in the future and we never know exactly what happens, but stay posted. We'll keep you posted and consider joining us and or telling a friend about it. And in the meantime, I'll check for comments and questions on the app. And if nothing is buzzing there, I will return to reading from the book Of Course in Miracles by Alan Cohen. And when I was finished reading yesterday where I left off, we had talked about his story of the woman who was down on her luck and didn't have much money, and an elderly woman in her apartment invited her for a meal, cooked a fabulous Thanksgiving dinner with all of the foods that this young woman liked, sent her home with enough leftovers for a week. And the next morning, she went to try and return the Tupperware containers to this woman, and the apartment was empty. And the landlord said, no one's been in there for months. And so Alan is trying to highlight the message that comes from things like A Course in Miracles and the Way of Mastery and many other teachings, that we're not alone. We're all connected. We do have um, we do have the ability to look at everything that's happening in our lives as though it's happening for us rather than happening to us or as a punishment to us. And Alan's quoting things from the Course in Miracles where he says, he will not leave you comfortless, nor fail to send his angels down to answer you in his own name. And then in the workbook 76, the Course in Miracles asks, do you really think that you are alone unless another body is with you? And then Alan writes, space between relationships is highly empowering. He said, I know people who jump from one relationship to another and lurch to find someone to fill their sense of emptiness. But the time after a breakup is a fertile opportunity to deepen your relationship with yourself. Many people lose themselves in a relationship, pretending they give their power away to their partner, or they become a satellite to their partner's world instead of retaining their own world. If you choose a partner in order for that person to complete you, you have overlooked the truth that you're already complete. And I talked about this yesterday. Two half people get together, and pardon the pun, all you get is a bloody mess. You have to have two whole people who understand their wholeness come together and choose to share their energy, their time, their lives together in order for a relationship to truly exist. Only when you, Alan writes, only when you bring your fullness to a relationship can you and your partner enjoy, you can enjoy your partner and yourself. And then he quotes the workbook from the Course in Miracles as saying, quote, you recognize your brother as yourself, and thus do you perceive that you are whole, close quotes. Alan writes, many of us perceive or sense of loss when someone dear to us passes on. While this is natural to our human experience, as divine beings, we're not subject to loss. And then he quotes a textbook from Course in Miracles saying, all loss comes only from your own misunderstanding. Loss of any kind is impossible, close quotes. And so when I read something like that, I think, well, I know a lot of people that are going to be thinking purely of the material world and the physical world, and they're going to think that's rubbish. And what springs into my mind is thoughts from Guy Finley, who talks about how everything exists in levels of scale. So in one sense, yes, you've lost this friend. This body is no longer there for you to relate to. In another sense, everything about your experience with that person, the the memories, the life learnings, the joys, the strengths and weaknesses that you shared are still available in your mind for you to access as long as you're not shutting them out or turning them down in terms of volume because of the discomfort that you're generating around thinking that they should be here and now they're gone or you're less without them, etc. Alan writes, many people experience profound connection and communication with loved ones who have passed on, and we may feel even closer to them since we're no longer separated by the illusion of physical distance. Our loved ones live vibrantly in our mind or heart, regardless of their physical absence. He says medium Matt Frazier calls his seminars, quote, love never dies, close quote. We might title a similar seminar, Love is Never Alone. Alan writes, in the movie Heart and Souls, Thomas has 5 spirit guides. Little Thomas has 5 spirit guides constantly at his side. He talks with them and plays with them as normally as if they were human. His parents grow fearful of him cavorting with invisible friends, and they tell him that his friends are imaginary. Over time, Thomas forgets about his spirit guides and goes on to a normal life. Yet the guides remain with him, though he sees them not. As a man, Thomas hits a low point, immersed in emotional turmoil. Humbled, he asks for help, and his non-physical friends reappear to him. We all have guides in spirit who are eager and ready to help us, yet we must be open to receive their aid, and we must ask. There's a passage from the Bible that he quotes here from Isaiah 58, verse 9. Quote, then you will call, and the Lord will answer. You will cry for help, and he will say, here am I. Close quotes. Alan writes, you don't need to know who your guides are in order to receive their aid. You can simply call upon the Holy Spirit, who will dispatch help in the most appropriate form. And then Alan quotes the workbook from Course in Miracles, where it says, you will be told exactly what God wills for you each time there is a choice to make. The great Indian sage Ramana Maharshi's teachings run very similar to the Course in Miracles. When the master was on his deathbed, his disciple sat beside him and cried and said, please, master, don't leave us. Sri Ramana smiled and replied, quote, where could I go? Close quotes. Now, the sage could make that statement because he knew his identity as capital S Spirit, that which dwells wherever anything lives. Then he quotes a textbook where it says, of Course in Miracles, where it says, God's Son cannot will death for himself because his Father is life and his Son is like him. Close quotes. We can make that statement just the same way with equal authority when we remember that the Creator who created us lives within us, as us, and through us. We all have moments of loneliness. We all have moments of deep connection with ourselves, each other, and our Creator. A Course in Miracles is our impeccable guide to remember that aloneness does not exist in the mind of the Creator, and therefore it does not exist in our right mind. And truly, it does not exist at all. A higher hand holds our hand, and when we reach to grasp it, we will find the comfort that our hearts desire. Then he quotes from the workbook, quote, whatever troubles you, be certain that he has the answer, and he will gladly give it to you if you simply turn to him and ask it of him. He will not withhold answers that you need for anything that seems to trouble you. He knows the way to solve all problems and resolve all doubts. His certainty is yours. So here is checking the app. Celinda, are you in the air?
Can you hear me?
I hear rustling a lot more loudly than your voice, but yes, speak up, please.
Okay, I've got the phone as close to hand. I was going to ask for a worksheet to be shared with the group last night, but because of how it unfolded and because that's always our dinner hour, I just listened, and I was wondering if we could do it today sometime.
Well, no time like the present, as my grandmother would say.
uh, it's concerning my cataract be getting worse. So I did the worksheet, and a whole bunch of things came out of it that I would like to share with our listeners and you.
Okay, so let me get this clear. Are you asking to do a worksheet or present one you've already done?
I'm presenting one I've already done, but I
Okay,
was interested in feedback as well.
okay,
Is
go ahead.
that good?
I just wanted to be clear because we don't have time to do both, but go ahead and share what you want to share.
Okay, I'm doing the short form of the latest worksheet, and it is I, Celinda. May I read it?
Yes.
I, Celinda, who am love, am experiencing fear. My denial and my initials displaces my experience of myself as my essence love, and my mind tells me that emotions are caused by my trigger, which are my cataracts. My perception is my cataracts seem to be getting worse. That I also have driver's license test coming up in about 3 months. The truth is only my thoughts cause my emotional upset. Read this. The thoughts, a separate sheet for each one, I use to cause my emotion is my mother said I'd be blind just like her um, when I grew up. She was she felt that she was extremely blind. She did not have Coke bottle glasses, but she felt she was extremely blind and rarely ever went without her glasses. And she told me that when I was 10. Um, Let me see. Okay, it says next the punishment thought was demanding my cataracts to dissolve rather than inviting or questioning them. I'm demanding them, so I'm putting a lot of pressure on myself, which is probably increasing the inflammation factor. And then I terrorize myself by my fear of being blind. It's like being under a curse in a way. So my desire, um, the constructive result, the exact goal that drives and uncovers my pain is I want my cataracts to dissolve and disappear so I can clearly see myself, others, in my world as they truly are. Okay. And then I choose to love my essence, which stirs the love in everyone involved. And the rose butterfly flower story, which I have attached myself to the rose of my cataracts rather than the ground of my being. When upset, my perception, my mind's construct is built out of false data driven by my goal. By collapsing that goal, the drive that selects the data that produces my reality, uh, I'm going to put in there the data ideas, the facts, quote unquote, as if there are any facts in this physical world, that of mine, that produces my reality. My errant perception collapses, and I get to drop into the parts of my mind hidden from me by my pretense that others are responsible for what I have created. Again, if they are the one with the problem, why am I the one with the pain? Now, do I cancel the goal now, or do you do the forgiveness pattern, or um, do we
Well,
just?
I thought you were presenting a worksheet you'd already done.
Okay, I've already done it, so we'll pass on that. While holding love, conscious, active, and present, Rahma, I now choose to collapse my mind's lies by willingly killing my goal uh, for my cataracts to dissolve and disappear so I can clearly see myself, others, in my world as they truly are, and or as I truly am. Okay. Uh, I invite Ruha to incline me toward healing, restore me to my newborn essence love. I'm checking all of these off. I have. Heal my denial and capacity to degenerate my emotion of fear. Help me and to help me open a direct conscious relationship with and gently remove the denied, dissociated, and projected parts of my mind. I cancel my need to be right and make up another story out of my hidden corrupt data to hallucinate proof that my fear, hostility based story, my reality is true. Breathe and soften. I now feel more connected to my mother and me together. Um, and see that I am only responsible for the downloads I've received and how I choose anew to create as to my life responses, and also as to my downloading them as a curse and feeling that um, I have to buy into them or create them in my life. And at this point, what I realized is this really was a worksheet about my mother and me. And so Dear Cataracts, based on three from love, I structure a goal toward you and offer to you um, gratitude for keeping me safe until I could choose anew. I now choose clear vision and do see my forgiveness work around this willingness by doing another week's worksheet around this issue with my mother as the trigger, and possibly one of myself as the trigger around this issue of my cataract.
So, when you were doing that canceling of the goal and asking to be shown, did you have an insight?
Oh, yes.
What is the insight?
The insight was when I was 11 and we had just moved from um, the jungle of San Francisco, Hunters Point, up to um, Oregon, where Walla Walla area in Washington and the little towns on the other side of the border where I went to school and where my grandparents lived. My mother took me in apparently to an optometrist, and that was when I first got my glasses. Um, and this is funny, but that was also when she bought me my first bra. And the connection, I think there's a connection in there, I'm not clear, but I had just received on Valentine's Day a box of chocolates from a little sixth grader. His name, by the way, was Charlie Love, and that's about when I got my glasses. And I don't know what those connections are, but they feel very significant to me. Oh, and also on this worksheet, I now choose I commit to love, to living a human life. To help achieve this, I do a mass counseling of all the times I wanted number three from someone or anyone else as a goal, as a demand goal, rather than as a request that they are free to fill or not, and where I would remain calm and accepting and allowing of that.
Okay.
And then I
Anytime I
also
do,
love, oh, I'm sorry.
go ahead.
Also, I love that one where it says on the regular worksheet that's not the short form, I ask to be shown a time when I have not fulfilled this. And so I really spent time thinking about the times that I have predicted and sent a message of harm to someone else, um, and my responsibility for sending the message, the prediction or the curse or whatever you want to call it, the judgment of how something was going to happen in the future, which we know doesn't really exist except in our minds because we create the future out of our present and we create our present out of our past. So it's all one big ball of wax when we're not in the present. And I just wanted to say, whoa, it's just brought me more and more conscious about um, having a guard at my mouth when I start thinking that I know how things are and how they're going to be, predicting.
Okay. And so, what was the emotional state that you find yourself in after completing the worksheet?
I felt, I feel much calmer about this. And it also brought up another issue that I have, physical issue of my tremor in my left arm. And so I can see that there are going to be worksheets around that too, as soon as I get through this process to where I feel complete. And I shared that with Michael and Jeannie yesterday. And collars. So we did some things around that tremor and discoveries I have made, ahas that I have made connections about in relation to the tremor and when it happens, and because it just happens. It can come at any time, but I'm beginning um, have a flashlight on or a spotlight on when does it happen, and I'm beginning to sort that out now and see when it shows up. And it shows up when I am being observed, like embarrassment or feeling shame or having angst or having something really exciting happen, like a new insight or something, and I want to share it, and I'm sharing it, and I get that tremor, and sometimes my whole body will tremor. So it has something to do with expression, which I was given a mind shifter by Michael for, which seems totally appropriate. So I will work with that. And primary my primary tools are the tapping or optimum EFT, um, which is a parallel for me for the worksheet. And the worksheet, which is becoming more and more important to me as I find more and more um, insights from outside and inside, both about about the importance of it and what a crafted document it is that Michael has created here. I'm, and I really appreciate now that I can at least do these worksheets without having a reaction anymore. When I'm ready, and I know I'm ready, I do it.
All right. Is there some comment or support from me that you're asking for in this?
Yes. Any insight you have, anything you would like to share, a perspective maybe that I don't see, I would appreciate.
Well, I think the only comment that comes to me is that when you talked about having some insights as you did this worksheet, what I try to do is use each of those as beginning points for other worksheets. So when you talk about being younger and getting some candy or chocolate from somebody with last name of love, and when that floods into your mind, I would explore, okay, so are there worksheets for me to do in that, even if it's just a worksheet around how I believe that this event made me feel so happy, right? So I can cancel the goal of having my happiness come from someone or something outside of me. It's kind of a more advanced concept with this work. Most of us are experiencing a life that is, you know, built around the belief that our emotions are caused by people and things outside of us, positive and negative. And most of the time when people come to this work, it's because they're looking for relief from their negative emotional states. So most of the worksheets people do are going to be, I feel angry and my mind is telling me I'm angry because X, Y, and Z person outside of me said or did something. The truth of the matter is, the dynamic is the same whether I believe I am happy because someone else did something, or I am sad because someone else did something, or I'm angry because someone else did something. Each of those is placing the locus of control outside of myself. And so you can do a worksheet to good effect, even if you're you're doing it because this interaction happened and you believe because of this interaction you're feeling joy.
Yes, I was thinking that would definitely, because I asked that question once, I think a while back, and I don't remember whether it was to you or to Michael, but could I do a worksheet on a joyful emotion? Yeah.
Yeah,
What?
and the dynamic is you're not trying to dismantle the joy.
Right.
The purpose is to dismantle the belief that your joy is only happening because someone or something outside of you is the way it is.
Right. Right. I'm real clear on that. I'm getting clearer every day, sir. I have a quick little um, thought I'd like to share with you, or an experience that I had about 3 years ago, 4 years ago or so. Um, I was contacting a couple of grandmothers from the our closest Indian reservation here. I shouldn't say Indian, Native American reservation here. And the lady, when we were chatting, one of the grandmothers, said, somehow mentioned going to school at Weston and living in Weston, which is a teeny tiny community um, outside of where I lived and grew up in Walla Walla part time, and also went to high school in the little town across the border in Oregon. And I flashed when she said that. I flashed on Charlie Love giving me the chocolates, and so I asked her, "Oh, did you know Charlie Love?" Because she lived a long time in Weston, where I'd gone to school in the sixth grade, part time. And she said, "Oh yes, I knew Charlie Love. He was a friend of mine." And I said, "Oh, how's he doing?" And she said, "Unfortunately, he died a few years ago." And I noticed that I was disappointed because I noticed what I was feeling was this desire to thank him for that box of chocolates. Because when he gave it to me, I was just in shock. I mean, I'm a sixth grader, right? I've got the mind of a child still playing paper dolls. And so I didn't know how to respond, and I can't remember if I even thanked him as a sixth grader. But I took the home chocolates home, and I very eagerly ate them up and shared them. And I would have loved to have thanked him for that gift because it was a real gift. I mean,
And
I
that is
never
another
realized.
worksheet
Yeah, and
because you just lied and said you felt disappointment because,
yeah, right.
right? So there's the denial. You
Oh, I
think
felt
you're feeling the disappointment because of something outside of you.
yeah. Good
And
point.
we would encourage you to say, I generated disappointment.
Oh, thank
So
you.
we're not trying to be in denial about the emotion you have. We're trying to help ourselves be more accurate in our description of how it gets within us, how we're experiencing it. And you're not experiencing disappointment because Charlie is no longer alive. You're experiencing disappointment because of what you're making it mean that you heard the news that he's no longer alive, and because of how you have this idea that you would like things to be different than what they are. And so you're using that dynamic by way of interpretation and response to create an experience that's resonating in you as disappointment. And when you think of it that way and when you speak of it that way, now you're in the driver's seat. Now it's empowering. But as long as you believe that you're disappointed because Charlie died and you don't have the ability to thank him, you're living in the illusion that your emotions are created by this outside event.
And I'm also living in another illusion, Tim, is that I can't thank him now.
Exactly.
And thank you. And when you said I generate disappointment, I could say I created disappointment, right?
Sure, you can say whatever you want.
Yeah, because I love,
Use the words that resonate best for you.
yeah, my regulatory speech. And there you go. um, Creating and co-creating with the creator and co-creating with my world, and the what I see in it, is very meaningful for me. It's that interdependent, interconnected place that I am, am what would the word be that I really want to, that I'm beginning to experience instead of a world of disconnect and separation and
So,
exclusion.
so if we come to the way of mastery in the third lesson, it talks about, you know, you say, wait a minute, how can I do this? I can't do anything about that little boy that I kicked when I was 4 years old just because I wanted to see him cry.
Right.
And the way of mastery says, well, of course you can, because this whole thing about time and distance doesn't really exist. And you can dismantle your judgment about how horrible that was. You can make an apology. And even if that person was in front of you, they would still have their decision to make about whether or not to accept your apology.
That's right.
And the actual process is, it says, you know, the experience of looking back in your life and suddenly seeing a scene in which now you know you behaved selfishly or from ego in the past. Or maybe you were manipulative or cunning or hurtful, and you recognize, oh my God, I was really in judgment of that person. Oh, if only I could go back and undo it. And Way of Mastery asks, do you know that feeling? And of course, every one of us that's being honest knows that feeling. And Way of Mastery goes on and says, I say unto you, you can, because everything is present. There is no such thing as past and future. There is only now. So when you have that thought or memory, it's coming to you for a very specific reason. As a soul, you are learning about forgiveness and learning about how to undo the effects of your previous choices. I would add here the word judgments and perceptions, because that's the definition of forgiveness in this work and from the work of the Kabbalistic manuscript and from the work of the Course in Miracles. Cancel everything you think you want, open a curtain in your practice, put away your trifling treasures, and leave a clean and open space for the Christ mind to come. That's from A Course in Miracles. From the Way of Mastery, it says to forgive means to choose to release another from the perceptions you have been projecting upon them. It is therefore an act of dismantling one's own projections. So earlier in the third lesson, it says every judgment and every perception needs to be dismantled in order for me to see actuality clearly. So it says, when the old memory comes, stay with it. Look at it, recognize how judgment worked at that time, and then say in your mind to that person or event, I judge you not. I extend forgiveness to myself for what I have created. I embrace you and I love you. I free you to be yourself and I bless you with the blessing of Christ.
That's good
And
because I
and
say,
and right away it says, oh, wait a minute. When I kicked that boy when he was 4 years old just to see him cry, he's not here. And it says, isn't he? The body is not here, but the body is not quite the soul. All minds are joined. That means that where you extend forgiveness, where you dismantle your judgment, where you dismantle your perceptions, when you extend your true nature of love, consciously extend it within your emotional field, and you do that extending it to another, whether they're physically present or not, you are extending to them exactly what you could extend to them if they were physically in front of you. Even if they were there, they would still have the choice to receive it or not. They still have their choice to make, whether to accept the apology and forgiveness or to remain in judgment of you. That's their issue, not yours. Understand then, you are dealing with consciousness. You are not a physical being. You are spirit. And you are intimately linked with all minds at all times. Therefore, this dismantling of your judgment and perceptions that we call forgiveness can occur any time that you decide it can occur. Anyone that you believe has ever wronged you, you can dismantle your judgment of that in this very moment. Anytime you've created a judgment of another and then therefore been in judgment of yourself, you can undo that judgment in this next moment by making a simple choice. And in the Course in Miracles, I don't know the exact quote, but there's a quote that says, when you go to the original error in thought and dismantle it, all effects of that error in thought are undone in that moment. So I would leave you with that. I would thank you for the comments and the sharing of the worksheet, and I would recommend that the only advice I could give on something like this is the same advice I would have for myself, is to just do a worksheet on every episode that comes to mind as I'm doing an initial worksheet. Michael Ryce likes to say he sits with a stack of 10 to 12 blank worksheets every time he does a worksheet for this very reason.
Thank you. And I think I'll reread The Way of Mastery, Chapter 3 as
Yeah,
well.
lesson 3 is what I was reading. Somebody just asked, what were you just reading from? It is The Way of Mastery, lesson 3 that I was just reading.
Perfect.
So thank you, Celinda. I will attempt to end this call so I can wrap up the show. Thank you for the call, as always. And um, Julia has a thank you and a clap. I will remind us all that this first hour is going to end. I'll turn off the app. It'll be a couple minutes. Michael and Jeannie will start their second hour. Please remember to come back for that if you're so inclined and have the availability. Um, the replay of this show and all the others are starting to be available through your favorite app store, whether it's Spotify, Apple, Google Play, Amazon, etc. I'll remind us all that we come from love. We're made of the stuff that we call love.